Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first part of a new What If series. Now, if you've read the title, you know what we're doing. Welcome to the What If War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron characters. We're in TFP. I've been waiting a while for this one, so let's get started. Our story begins where Fall of Cybertron ended, with the Autobots and Decepticons fighting on the Ark and Nemesis. During the fight, a lot of events take place. Predacons is launched off the Ark thanks to Jazz and Jetfire and the aerial bots. Cliffjumper is also launched off the Ark, but Jetfire comes to his rescue, saving him and catching him. Bumblebee intervenes in Megatron and Optimus's fight, and Optimus gets the strength to defeat Megatron, because let's just say this is the ending where Optimus wins the fight. Optimus, Megatron, and Bumblebee stand on the deck, with Optimus managing to get him and Bumblebee inside, because even though I know the game shows him flying off the Ark with Megatron, let's just say when the Ark came through the portal, he managed to get back on it. So he would find B and drag him back into the Ark while Megatron would go flying into the portal without being able to get back on the Nemesis or the Ark. Both ships go through the portal, with the portal closing not too long after, with Cliffjumper and Jetfire making their way back to Cybertron. As the two ships go through the portal, Optimus gets Bumblebee to Ratchet, who manages to stabilize him, but at that moment they arrive at the surface of Earth, both ships going crashing down into the planet's surface. One goes into a desert mountain, while the other ends up in the bottom of the ocean. Either way, both ships and their crew go into stasis lock, and remain that way for a long time. On Cybertron, Starscream awakes in Shockwave's lab from the hit he took from Grimlock, and he makes his way out. He learns of what happened since he was knocked out, and decides with Megatron gone, now is his time to actually take control of all remaining Decepticon forces. So he does so. Alpha Trion and Ultra Magnus make contact at Iacon, and thus take command over the remaining Autobot forces. And it is revealed that the Optimus' true plan, which was to lure the Decepticons, mainly Megatron and some of his heavy forces, away from Cybertron, so that Ultra Magnus and Alpha Trion could get the remaining refugees, Autobot, citizens, and any others off-world, without risk of being shot down. They order a planet-wide evacuation of all Autobots to get off the planet as soon as they can. Shockwave is found by barricading Blackout at the remains of his tower. He is then taken to Kaon, where he's put under heavy medical treatment and spark support until his new body can be finished. Predacons crashes and thus is found, and they are repaired eventually. Jetfire and Cliffjumper return and make contact with the other Autobots, with them aiding in the protection of the escaping prisoners. The fight is brutal for the Autobots, with them being heavily outnumbered and outgunned, as not many of them were left behind. But the tide of the battle is turned when Grimlock shows up in his team, Grimlock killing Quake. After the battle, Grimlock and the Dinobots explain what happened to them, where we see after the events of Shockwave's tower getting destroyed, the Dinobots would search the wreckage and find Grimlock, as well as make contact with the Autobots again, to which they would help repair Grimlock's systems and get him back online, as he was barely alive. Sometime later, they all head to Iacon, where they are taken under the wing of Alpha Trion, and the Dinobots agree to become the city's protectors, and thus hold the line against any remaining Decepticon forces that are still on the planet. It is there that they meet a young bot, a young student that is under Alpha Trion's wing, called Smokescreen. He gushes over the legendary Dinobot warriors, despite what they had been turned into. Grimlock and them dismiss him a little bit, but they honestly feel a little bit happy because he's the first Autobot in a while that hasn't called them a freak or dismissed them for what they have become. So they kind of get a little warmed up to him after some time. Eventually, Sludge's body / Spark is brought in. He is still alive, but barely, and Grimlock and them want him back. So Alpha Trion agrees to help them, with him using the power of the Forge of Solus Prime. As it's revealed, Alpha Trion is one of the 13 Primes, hidden in secrecy after the Primes disbanded. He uses the Forge to create a new body for Sludge, turning him into a Dinobot as well to fit with his team, and being forced to just use Shockwave schematics in his head. Thus, Sludge is brought back online, and the Dinobots are whole again. Shockwave would get his new body after some time, forming into his much larger, stronger TFP body. He would then learn of Starscream's rise in the ranks, as despite what he had, besides being a known traitor, there are still many Decepticons, like the Seekers, that have been left behind, that are still loyal to him, and will follow him no matter what. So, he has gained political power, to the point that he now runs most of the Decepticon forces. But with Shockwave's return, perhaps the ranks could fall under him instead. Over the years, the two would be rivals and keep the Autobots in the playing field for now. Years would pass until one day Ultra Magnus would go missing, leading to the Dinobots going after him. They would eventually find him at a Decepticon prison camp and rescue him along with several other Autobots that are in need of rescuing. But they would face off against Shockwave and one of his two newest creations, the Predacons. They would have a struggle to fight them, the two, a bluey ice one and a yellow purple one. But the fight would end in the Dinobots' victory, with them just being able to kill both of them. But Shockwave would get away, along with his Decepticon forces. But they would also run into another threat, Shockwave's army, the Forged, Decepticons, and Autobots, who were taken by Shockwave and mind-controlled to be under his leadership. A way to get an advantage over Starscream. So the Dinobots would fight through them and eventually get out of the prison camp, with Ultra Magnus and a few other remaining Autobots, like Hound. However, when they returned to Iacon, they would find it in ruins, as it was revealed that this was also not only a play to try to get the Dinobots, but also a distraction, so that Iacon's heavy hitters would be gone. Thus, the Decepticons would launch a full-on attack. Alpha Trion, during the attack, would launch the Iacon relics, but wouldn't have enough time to launch the final one. So he did what he had to, and knocked out Smokescreen, and placed the key within him using one of the other relics, the Phase Shifter, before sending that Phase Shifter off-world, just barely been able to. Alpha Trion is captured by the Decepticons and taken to Shockwave, while Smokescreen is also captured, but they see him as nothing more than just a young bot that would have nothing useful. So, he is put under the command imprisonment of Decepticon General Cyclonus, who takes him onto his prison ship, and they leave Cybertron to find other Autobots that are out there. Ultra Magnus would find a ship, and he would end up leaving Cybertron, as he knows that they need Optimus Prime and the others to come back, if they have any chance of stopping Shockwave and his newest creations. He offers the Dinobots a place to join him, saying that there's more than enough room, but Grimlock and them refuse, saying not only does somebody need to stay behind to keep the Decepticons busy from leaving, but they also need to protect Cybertron and the still remaining Autobots on their planet, despite what they think of them. Ultra Magnus accepts this and wishes them luck as he leaves in his ship. The Dinobots walk away to find others, and eventually do find a few others. Alpha Trion would be tortured by Shockwave and drilled for information, but with his limited resources, he wouldn't get much out of him, and thus Alpha Trion would eventually go offline, finally, out of his misery. Shockwave would realize he needs to find better methods of getting information, so he decides to create the Psychic Patch, his first and greatest creation of a non-living creature. The war on Cybertron would come to a standstill, with Energon in very low amounts. Starscream would end up taking most of the Energon left, as his forces just greatly outnumber both bots and Shockwave forces, which both of those forces would end up having to go underground in order to survive and gather whatever Energon remained, with the only few Autobots staying on the surface being Jetfire and a small aerial platoon, but they wouldn't last too long up there, and they would only stay up there just to keep Starscream from going underground and starving the remaining Cybertronians. Everybody was scared and was wishing for Optimus Prime to return, as many would begin to starve and die. Many, many years would pass on Earth, as the Rocky Mountain would form fully around the Ark, covering it, while the Decepticons' nemesis would remain under rubble and debris, keeping both hidden from human sight for a long time. That is until 1984, when an earthquake in the area would result in a cave opening in the mountain, allowing people to enter. That is when two kids, Spike and Carly, would walk in and discover the Ark and report it to the military. The military would order a complete silence on the scene, and for over 21 years would experiment on the ship and some of the crew, mainly autotroopers, let's just say, until the year 2005, when an experiment would end up reactivating Optimus. The humans are hostile at first, but Prime would calm the humans down and begin to explain himself to the Autobots and the Decepticons. Due to Optimus's reactivating, the Nemesis would detect it, and thus Soundwave would be reactivated first. Soundwave would then spend his time reactivating the rest of the Decepticons until they're all back. Decepticons include Thundercracker, Skywarp, Slipstream, Makeshift, Rumble, Laserbeak, and several car and jet Viacons are all that remains of the Nemesis crew, with most others being launched off or having been stuck on the Ark, and most likely are dead now. Soundwave would take temporary leadership and put Thundercracker as second in command. Soundwave would use the Nemesis' scanners and eventually detect Megatron somewhere in Earth's solar system, so sends Thundercracker and Skywarp to retrieve him while they find the Autobots. And that is where part 1 ends, guys. I hope you really enjoyed it. I can't wait to get to part 2. The story's going to be amazing, trust me. We'll soon get to the parts that actually go over TFP. I'm just setting up the story since, we gotta explain some things before we get to the actual main story of this. Anyways, hope you enjoyed it. See you in part 2. Have a good day.